is happening, Magnusites? It is time to laugh with the drinker. And make sure you stay tuned for my movie review of John Wick 4. Let's get it.
You know, sometimes you meet a stranger at a party or some dull corporate event and you end up having what I call a beige conversation. You swap some pleasantries, make a few innocuous jokes, and offer up some mild, inoffensive opinions about the current state of things. Yeah. It's all perfectly polite and easygoing, but there's no real substance or purpose to it, and by the time it's over,
like the
best you can say is, well, they seem nice enough. And by the following day, you'll struggle to even remember a single thing that either of you said or did. Well, that's basically my experience of Shazam 2, a perfectly nice, reliably inoffensive, and completely forgettable sequel that nobody really asked for or wanted. A film that did all the things expected of a superhero movie, showed us some good-looking people in tight outfits, delivered a few obligatory action scenes, a tried and tested message about the importance of teamwork, trusting people to make their own choices, and the value of self-sacrifice, and threw in some innocuous jokes that even the most blue-haired of Twitter land whales would struggle to get offended by. And now that I'm sitting here talking about it, I feel like I have to keep referring to a plot synopsis to remind myself of what even happens. Shazam 2 is the very definition of a generic superhero movie, a film that doesn't really do many things wrong, mainly because it doesn't try to do, well, anything. It exists for no other reason than because it can. And yet, ironically, it's probably better than almost anything that Marvel have managed to shit out in the past couple of years, which makes it kind of sad that the film is absolutely bombing at the box office. But don't worry, I'll talk about that one later. Believe that.
It's the Doctor Strange effects.
The film once again stars Zachary Levi as Billy Batson, an orphan teenager from a suspiciously clean and efficient-looking Philadelphia. Seriously, when I passed through it last year, the place looked like the aftermath of the Battle of Stalingrad.
You can find nice parts.
Billy has the magical ability to turn into a super-powered godlike being called Shazam because he stole it from a wizard in the previous movie. He and his mates have been working together as a superhero team to fight crime and prevent disasters in the city, but since they're basically a bunch of kids that have been handed godlike powers with no training or preparation, it goes about as well as you might expect. But that's the least of Billy's problems when Hespera and Calypso, a pair of evil gods from another dimension, break into a museum and steal the wizard's staff that gave...
By the way, I did say that this wasn't a woke film, but it checked some boxes. A lot of you tend to notice things that I don't notice sometimes, or some things I don't see the gravity of all the time when I'm watching something. Raised some interesting points in the comments, and I guess it is arguable that this movie was woke rather than having woke elements, but yeah.
Billy his powers. Their objective is to recover the golden apple from the tree of life so they can use it to restore their own world to peace and prosperity. So there's some fighting and one of the gang gets captured and Billy and the others try to negotiate his release, and there's a wacky joke about a magical pen that transcribes everything they say that gets hammered into the ground so fucking hard that it practically penetrates the Earth's core. Then there's more fighting.
I thought the pen jokes were funny. I did. I was like... And Scarlett at one point, when they're reading the letter, she's like, why is... I was like, yo, they still didn't figure it out. And it kept writing whatever they said.
And Hespera gets captured by Billy, who decides to leave her alone and unguarded in a prison cell.
Quick question, too. Was there a version of Shazam that was childlike, that was in the comics? Or in the animation before this movie was made? Let me know.
She's a fucking demigod with magical control over the elements, mate. Do you really think a set of steel bars are gonna stop her? Anyway, much to my non-surprise, Hespera escapes and steals the golden apple, but then Billy's mate Freddy also manages to escape because Hespera's other sister feels sorry for him and lets him go. Sure, okay. Then Calypso goes through and decides to wipe out all of humanity so that the rest of the movie can happen. So she summons a big army of disposable CGI monsters for the humans to fight. And since most of the gang have lost their powers over the course of the movie, it's up to Billy to face her one-on-one in a big CGI battle scene where I was never entirely sure of what was happening or why, but I know that at the end he sacrifices his life to stop her. But that's okay because then Wonder Woman shows up for some reason and brings him back to life, and
because they needed another god.
Everything goes back to normal like none of this even happens. You know, it's almost difficult to criticise a movie like Shazam 2 because it's so completely lacking in ambition and original ideas that it almost can't go wrong. The plot is the most standard boilerplate superhero story you could ask for. An evil enemy wants to unleash the apocalypse on Earth using a magical plot device that's the key to everything, and it's up to a plucky band of heroes to master their powers and work together to stop it. It's basically the Avengers, Justice League and Suicide Squad, only with a bunch of characters that no one really cares about. I mean, yeah, there's definitely a few moments where the stupidity reaches critical mass, and even the old, "they're just kids" excuse isn't enough to...
Got a question for you guys. Am I the only one that thinks that their mom is like hotter than she should be? Not that she shouldn't be attractive, but something is hubbish about her for some reason. I guess that's a good thing if you're dating, or even if she's married. I guess that's a good thing, but something is hubbish. Have you noticed that? Don't tell me I'm not the only one that noticed. It's not like anything's exaggerated, but there's something about her look that is like, you're just expecting someone to say, "Mom, what are you doing?"
To explain
Stepmom.
it away, like characters with overwhelming speed and strength that should allow them an easy victory, consistently stop in the middle of fights to marvel at how cool they are, allowing time for their enemies to regroup and come at them again. And then there's the totally inexplicable stuff, like one character who teleports out of the way of an incoming energy blast, only to get caught by it like 10 seconds later because I guess she teleported in an exact straight line.
Exactly. Yo, I thought that shit was so stupid. I was like, really? You teleported yourself all the way back, and then you see it still coming, and you don't move. Really?
I mean, seriously, have you never heard of stepping aside? Power levels fluctuate wildly throughout the film. Shazam takes serious damage just by getting thrown against a wall, but later in the film...
I thought about stuff like that too, Drinker! I'm like, they're hitting him with boxes, and this is like your Superman level invulnerability. What?
He's able to punch through an entire building without even missing his hair up. Not to mention that nobody seems to spill a single drop of blood in the entire movie, even a character who gets impaled by a fucking dragon. And then there's the ending that feels about as cheap and contrived as Ant-Man 3. Remember Star Trek Into Darkness, where Kirk sacrifices himself to save the Enterprise, only to get resurrected by Khan's magical bullshit blood like 5 minutes later?
Not a great plan.
Well, that's basically Shazam 2. Remember when movies had stakes and consequences? I like that. There's also a problem with cast bloat in this movie. There's like 6 members of the Shazam team, but only 2 of them get any real character development. The others just kind of hang around in the background. But damn, I wouldn't mind seeing more of this one if you catch my drift.
Yeah, I was kind of flip-flopping between her and Megan. Megan won out for me, though.
I can tell you about one of the other characters is that she really loves Skittles in what has to be one of the most shameless and absurd pieces of product placement I've ever seen. Anyway, all this criticism's made me thirsty. Excuse me while I open a can of delicious Pepsi to quench my thirsts. I don't know how I'd get by without it. Zachary Levi is decent as Shazam, bringing the same manic, childish energy as the first movie, and watching him swagger around in his big, goofy red costume, it's kinda hard not to like the guy just a little bit. Billy's a clueless kid that's totally out of his depth in this situation, and there's a decent little subplot about his angst over growing older and losing the family that he's come to rely on. It's not exactly Shakespeare, but it's enough to keep his character arc ticking over. Helen Mirren does her best in a part that's not really worthy of her talents, and while Jimon Honso is always fun to watch, the movie doesn't really give him much to do except to crack a few deadpan jokes here and there. But by far the worst offender has got to be Lucy Liu, who looks bored out of her mind and phones in a performance that only serves to highlight how clunky her dialogue is. I suspect that most of her scenes were filmed against a green screen, reacted to something that wasn't even there, but it's a bit of a problem when the main antagonist antagonist of your movie looks like they couldn't give a shit if they win or lose. And I guess that basically sums up my own experience of this movie. I was never particularly engaged with it because I never got the sense that anything or anyone was genuinely at risk. Just like Black Adam, it becomes difficult to pick apart the writing of Shazam 2 because by the time you come to think about it, you've forgotten half the stuff that even happens. Were the characters likable? I mean, I think so. The actors seem pleasant enough, but they get so little development that it's tough to say anything substantial about them. What about the action scenes? Well, I vaguely remember a bunch of stuff exploding and some disposable CGI monsters showing up, but that's about it. Were the jokes funny? Well, most of the humour felt about 5 years out of date, and the recurring gags were used way too much, but it all seemed pretty good-natured and well-intentioned. Unlike the MCU, I never got the sense that straight white men were legally mandated to be the butt of every single joke in this film. But the biggest question I find myself asking about Shazam 2 is, what was even the point of this movie? As much as the first Shazam was a welcome relief from the bleak, desaturated nihilism of the Snyderverse, it wasn't exactly a roaring success at
No!
the box office, and it definitely didn't feel like it needed a sequel. Not to mention the fact that just like The Flash and Aquaman 2, it represents a creative dead end for the DCU, so there's not a whole lot of incentive to watch it. Basically what I'm saying is that the first Shazam was an ideal time to play it safe. This is not. This is the time to go all in, take risks, do the unexpected. And therein lies the rub, dear viewer. The days when you could just trot out another generic boilerplate superhero movie like the dozens of others that came before it are a thing of the past. The superhero genre is heading into its twilight years now, and if you really want to grab audiences' waning attention, then you have to raise the bar of quality, passion, and imagination beyond not making something terrible. As I said at the start of this review, I came away from Shazam 2 with no real sense that I'd seen anything significant. Just like that conversation with a pleasant but forgettable stranger, there's definitely worse ways to spend your time, but I can't really say this is worth spending your hard-earned cash on. Now, just before I fuck off back into the ether, I wanted to make you aware of a little project that I've been working on. My first ever comic book, which is an officially licensed prequel to the Rambo franchise, is now available to order through Indiegogo. A New Kind of War tells the story of Colonel Troutman when he was a young Special Forces operative behind enemy lines in the Korean War. And well, if you're a fan of that particular franchise and you're interested in delving into the expanded backstory, then you might just find it interesting. Either way, I'll leave a link in the description and you can take a look.
Interesting. Okay.
Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
Get over to the drinker and subscribe. Tell him Tyrone Magnus sent you. Pretty much said everything I needed to say. I mean, that I had to say and more. So, yeah, I agree with him. Now, I have a movie to catch. 10 million subscribers. Woo!